Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Welcome back, everyone. Today I have guest Samm Smeltzer. Samm's a human resources representative and medical Qigong healer. She served as an HR manager for several years in the retail industry and later transitioned into healthcare, where she developed and implemented company-wide educational programs for leadership and staff. Currently, Samm is utilizing her skills in medical Qigong and human resources to help shape the workplace we know today. Her pursuit of finding the root cause of workplace disengagement has led her to a path of merging spirituality, Eastern medicine, and workplace wellness to create the capacity for deep healing our organizational cultures. Samm is the founder of the HRart Center, a business devoted to healing workplaces. She hosts the HRart of It Podcast and is the author of 2 books, HR Intuitive and Workplace Healers. Welcome, Samm. I am honored to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Tanya. It's an honor to be here.
So we are going to be talking about the healing practice of Qigong. So let's start off with, what the heck is Qigong?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So if we just break down the word Qigong, which is spelled Qigong, so in case you're trying to Google it, it's always helpful to know the spelling. But Qi is basically energy, and Gong means master. So when we're thinking about it, it's mastering energy. And most of us are familiar with Qigong in the form of movement, similar to like Tai Chi.
Yes.
So it's very similar like that. And that's the way Qigong was meant to be, was a self-cultivation practice where you're personally caring for your body. I am a certified medical Qigong therapist, which means that I can help with interventions on a table, typically like what we're familiar with in the energy work realm, like with Reiki. Mm-hmm. However, it's applying the Qigong theory, which is a lot of essentially Chinese medicine. So Qigong is also one of the main 4 branches of Chinese medicine. So it's like acupuncture without the needles, but just using energy work.
That's funny, because that's how I explain EFT tapping, acupuncture without the needles.
Yeah. Well, it's always helpful when people don't want to get stabbed with needles. It's a major appeal. But yeah, you're working the meridians, you're working the energy flow. And EFT, is closely aligned with acupressure. So it's just similar thought process. We're getting those meridians and the energy moving.
Yeah. So when you are working with someone, are you actually physically touching them or not? Or is it more similar to Reiki, where you're just kind of moving your hands over the body? Explain a little bit about what it looks like.
Yeah, for the most part, it is not touching the body. Now, every once in a while, we will lay our hands on with the intention of having a more intense chi emission into an area. So for example, like people who have problems with their knees, because there's tons of people who do that, they'll actually feel more comfortable having the warmth directly from the hands laying on the knees and feeling that pumping into the system. But for most, we are about 2 to 3 inches away from the body and working on the energy field that way. We have a couple practitioners that integrate all kinds of other modalities with it. So you will have some that have acupressure. I do study acupressure, so every once in a while I will work those points in. But yeah, it's really like, I tell a lot of people it's like Reiki on steroids, because we don't do a lot of touching. I don't do a lot of touching. And from my background and my bio, you kind of, I'm an HR practitioner. We're taught not really to touch.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting kind of shift for me. And I still kind of struggle with that. So it really has to be going to maximize the impact for me to choose to touch a body.
Yeah. And there is a modality called healing touch. And I know that I started to see that more prevalent in the healthcare system, which I was really excited about. So is it similar or different to Reiki, where Reiki, you utilize symbols and you visualize things? Is it similar to that, or is it different?
There are some similarities. So there are talisman and symbols that you can imagine in visualization. We do that a lot, but really at the core of at least medical Qigong. So there's different branches of Qigong. There's some that are focused on spirituality. There's some that's focused on martial arts. And the form that I study is medical. So we really focus on how energy is connected to the physical body and the emotional body. So what we're watching is emotions. We're watching the organs. So we're actively, like, when we're dipping into the body, it's common for us to say, hey, we're going to work on your kidneys today, or we're going to work on your liver. There's stagnation in the liver. And we're actually looking at the meridians that are running from those organs and trying to identify kind of the pathway of the disease, whether it's mostly, we're talking from an energetic standpoint, not really from a physical, how we know Western medicine kind of disease.
Yeah. And so when you are working with someone, are you being intuitively guided as to where to work, or is there a process or a structure that takes place?
So when we work in one-on-one table sessions, we do a hookup, which basically we connect to a divine source. So it's partially my energy, but also greatly assisted by the divine. And depending on the practitioner skill sets, for me, I am an intuitive. So I am intuitively guided, and I work with guides and angels, and they help me out with all of this, because I'm not a healthcare practitioner. And so even though I have the general knowledge base, if someone comes in and they're talking about things that are beyond me, there's things that happen on the table, and that's really because of other people, other guides helping me out, not really me being all knowing, because that's not what happens in this space.
So it's really like you're kind of being the vessel for that energy to come through, whatever. It's very similar to me when I'm doing muscle testing, or even quantum healing hypnosis. It's very similar. I'm just acting as a vessel and allowing that chi, that energy to flow through me. And I love this, because when I first booked this show with you, I thought we were going to talk about physical, the actual movement Qigong. So I am like, woo, this just blew my mind open a little bit, because I did not realize that medical Qigong is so different. And I love this, because these are things that need to be incorporated more in the healthcare system, in our workplace. And so you are having that HR background, and then moving into your medical Qigong healing, you are starting to kind of bridge these two worlds. And this is fascinating in itself. So tell us briefly how you came about to even learning or even understanding Qigong, being an HR representative.
So the abbreviated version is, I had a corporate job just like everybody. I ended up in healthcare, and I had a really great job. It checked all the boxes, and I kept finding myself, I guess, becoming disengaged, which is a buzzword. And I didn't understand why, because I was an HR practitioner. So we're supposed to be the makers of engagement. And if we can't stay engaged in a workplace, then what hope is it for the rest of the organization? And so I really decided to venture out on my own to try to find this magical solution to employee engagement, because I was young, and this was almost 10 years ago, thinking that I was going to be this.
Yeah. And we used to have to do surveys all the time for employee engagement.
And still had no answers to it. So, and so I went out on my own, and I kind of fell into a path, which most people do, of this self-healing and self-improvement and looking internally, and went to psychology and sociology, spent some time with some spiritual teachers. And they were there was really cool kind of modalities that were there, but they weren't everything that I was looking for. It just seemed very complex to try to add it into the workplace. And at the same time, as I was healing, I realized that my personal sensitivities that I shut down as a child because they were so overwhelming, they started to come back. So at the same time, I was working with a holistic coach who was trying to help me, figure out how to stop seeing things that I didn't want to see, or understanding what was happening, because it was just kind of opening like a whirlwind. And she actually mentioned, I really think you just need to study something around energy work to get a handle on this, and then figure out what you want to do with it. Like, that's what the decision we all have to make is, what do we want to do with our intuitive skill sets?
Yeah.
And so while I was trying to figure that out, because I had no idea, I'm an HR practitioner. We don't do any of that stuff in the corporate world.
Especially let alone in healthcare too.
That's right. And I actually went to our local holistic shop. They had an open house where they were offering like $20 tarot readings. And there's a local tarot reader that everyone raves about. And I sat down across from her. And of course, the first card she pulls is like, oh, you're trying to find out what's next for you and looking for education. And I was like, yeah, where am I supposed to go? And she said, Qigong. And I went, what? Like Qigong, you're looking for Qigong. And I was like, okay.
So you'd never heard of it before?
No, couldn't even like pronounce it. Like I was trying to find paper, like trying to attempt to spell it. And after she finished my reading, I got up and she put her hand out and said, what are you going to do next? And I said, I'm going to Google it. And she said, that's not how we do things here. That's not how we find teachers. Give me your card. And Monday she goes in touch with me and said, there's a teacher that's not too far from you that everyone highly recommends. And that February, I walked into that classroom with nurses and acupuncturists and chiropractors. And here I am, this HR professional that's like, I don't really even fully understand what this thing is, but here I am. And it completely changed my life. And it started to provide these nuggets that I was looking for. And it gave me a place to use my skill sets. It was that missing puzzle piece that I needed to just make all of this come together.
That's so neat. So Samm, can you do Qigong on yourself similar to Reiki, or is it always just on someone else?
So you can do Qigong on yourself. Those are the movements that everyone's familiar with. So they're known as self-cultivation practices. And those exercises are doing the same thing that we do on the table. So the table I always call is like lazy man Qigong. Like when you're too tired to do it, we can do it for you and regulate your energy, but you can do all that yourself.
That's a good slogan. When you're too tired to do it, we'll do it for you.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That's how I get a lot of my clients. But yeah, so you totally can. And that's the form that it was meant to be, was that everyone takes care of their energy. You know, when it started in China, it was a way for people to care for their energy system, just like you would care for your physical body. So you would go work out. And then if you cool down with some Qigong exercises, you're regulating your emotions and clearing thoughts and just getting rid of all that stuff that's heavy on us that we accumulate throughout the day.
Yeah. And so I know when I lived in Florida, I would see them doing Qigong on the beach, or what I thought at the time was Tai Chi. So how different is Tai Chi to Qigong? Are they very similar, or is there some differences there?
They are very similar. And really what it comes down to is the intention behind the movement. Tai Chi is a little bit faster at times, where Qigong is going to be just a tad bit slower on the speed scale, because you're really tuning internally and focusing on flowing the energy. You know, one of the most basic forms of Qigong is breathing in and out, you know, breathing in energy, exhaling out what doesn't serve us. And even my personal Qigong practice is a standing meditation for 20 minutes. So there's no movement that's really happening. It's really about tuning internally and listening and activating your personal kind of energy, which is very similar to what you do when you do self Reiki on yourself. Like, I feel like it's kind of that fusion there.
Yeah. Or even a yoga practice, right? So Qigong is like a practice. Am I correct in saying that? Similar to yoga? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause that one sounds like mountain pose, where you just kind of stand there and strong, and rooted into the ground, or even tree for that matter. You know, I mean, it's kind of funny how they're all very basic, how they're
they are. Yes. Yeah. Tree pose. Yeah.
Tree pose. Yeah. And so Samm, how have you incorporated this into the workplace? How have you been able to kind of bring this Eastern medicine into kind of a Western society?
Yeah. So it's been an interesting journey that, you know, taking in there, it's kind of pioneering, because it is very, it's from an outside kind of thought process. And for me personally, my background is in leadership development. So I'm working with leaders of organizations and proposing that this is the solution to a lot of the issues that we're having in the workplace. Now, one of the gifts that 2020 and the pandemic gave us was burnout, which I know everyone sucks and hates, but it gave me a really nice window of opportunity.
That was a package of coal.
That's right. But for a Qigong practitioner, you know, we can really turn somebody around energetically from burnout, because burnout is kind of accumulation of large amounts of stress and emotion. And so even us putting somebody on a table, we could do a couple of table sessions and they were seeing the person be like who they were before the pandemic. And that was showing the power of the energy work. So we got a lot of traction there. I worked with a lot of referrals from people when you couldn't retain somebody, you thought that they were going to just leave or quit or have to go on medical leave, they would send them to us first and see if they could see any kind of difference, and we would give them tools. And it was really interesting because we would have some Qigong exercises are a little funky, but these people are openly doing them in the work environment, and their supervisors would embrace them because they would see the difference between when they wouldn't do their exercises and when they would do their exercises. And so that's how it started. Now we're trying to take it to the next level because there's people, just like with any kind of energy modality, you have to be willing to come and explore it, or you have to hit a point where you need help. And so you're going to go explore whatever to get that help. You kind of hit that rock bottom place. And we really want to move forward at the HRart Center and give the resources to people before they get there. Like, we don't feel like you need to get there. You know, Qigong was always meant to be a tool for health, to sustain health, not to pick you up when you are like all systems are down. And so we've been playing with that, doing these team interventions where we're meeting with leaders and taking them through very basic exercises that are mostly visualization based, breathing based, and having them tune into themselves personally. And it's been a challenge because this is a population that doesn't go inward very often. And we're also taught not to do that at work. But I truly believe this is the path moving forward. So yeah, it's kind of like a stay tuned, because this is the vision and moving it in there, and we are seeing progress being made, but it has been a rough journey for people because things are hard. They're hard right now in the workplace.
Yeah, and it's so different. And, you know, had I had these tools back when I was working in healthcare, I was designated as the health champion. You know, our hospital system was fairly large, and they would designate health champions for each of the areas. And honestly, I was struggling with burnout. So it was hard for me to even plan things to help other people struggling with burnout. And so had I had the tools of Qigong, you know, I had the tools of meditation and breath work, but I do feel Qigong could have been something that I could have brought to my workplace at that time, not only to help others struggling with burnout, but myself as well. And so I kind of stumbled upon Qigong. It was probably 3 years ago personally, and I started doing it myself. I'd find ones on YouTube and just do some of the movements. And I did notice that it would help alleviate my thoughts, or not alleviate, but slow down my thoughts. You know, that stress, and even the fatigue. So how does it help that burnout? I mean, how can it really help that stress? And what, you know, kind of, I guess, what is the not really the science, maybe the science behind it, but what is behind it that helps bring that stress level down?
Yeah. So when we're talking about Qigong aims to do 3 very specific things. So when you're doing those exercises and when you're educated, so if you are like you, Tanya, if you're on YouTube and finding Qigong exercises, just learning what these intentions are behind it will just magnify them. Because when you can tune into, this is what we're doing, and the instructor's exhaling and breathe out, and you know the intention, it's going to just magnify it. So the 3 steps that we're always doing, number 1, we're always purging. So we're actively choosing to get rid of stuff that does not serve us. So that's thoughts, that's emotions, that's physical discomforts. We have the ability to energetically move them and exit the system. So when you're exhaling out, or they're having you kind of comb through the body, you're gathering things energetically and you're releasing them and recycling them into the earth. The second thing is tonification. So you have the ability to breathe in new energy, new life. This is why when you go on hikes, or you're out in nature, or when you're taking walks, it feels so good to breathe in that fresh air, because you're breathing in Earth's energy or heaven's energy, and just being just totally filled up.
Reoxygenating yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that's number 2. And the last one is called regulation, which is actively kind of running the energy through an orbit through your system to make sure that you don't have pockets of excess or deficiency. So whenever you do an exercise, sometimes people will have a cramp or something like that. And I always say your meridians are kind of like, you know, they're hoses that get kinked up. And like so rivers. When they're, and when they're popping open, it's not always such a pleasant kind of process. And sometimes they pop open and sometimes they get stuck, or sometimes they don't get unstuck. So it just keeps building and that pressure's there. And so the regulation aspect kind of starts to shift and gather and taking that excess and help moving it through. And regulation in particular obviously settles the entire nervous system. So because of just the breath work and that kind of orbit, when we treat on the table, when we get to regulation, everybody falls asleep. Like that's how we know that we've done our job. So you might be active during the purging and the tonification, and then we run the orbit a couple times and you're just like out for the count. And like we leave you there kind of incubating for a little bit. So yeah. So the way that it works with burnout, it's removing things that don't serve you. It's actually regulating the system, and then it's giving you more energy. So there's a lot of modalities out there that talk about that you're born with a certain amount of energy and you can't get any more. And that's a myth. Qigong is telling you that you can restore that. They're saying that you can heal lineages of, fatigue and things like that by using Qigong to change your energy and move it in the right direction.
Yeah, there's like an infinite supply of energy. We just have to plug into it.
Yeah, like your background, Tanya. Like that's like,
yeah, this is how you plug into it too. And when I thought of Qigong, I thought I need a nature background today, because that's exactly what people need to be thinking of. And so, Samm, is there a technique or an exercise that someone can do at their desk? Like someone, if you're at the desk for 8-10 hours a day, which there were times I would be reviewing medical records and and I had some ergonomic things that I could do, but is there like a simple technique or something that you can do if you've been kind of sitting at your desk or maybe even on Zoom meetings all day?
Yeah. So one of the best ones is whenever we're talking about being tired, so that mid-afternoon kind of slump, or for me, sometimes it's even mid-morning, whenever you would go for that other cup of tea or that other cup of coffee, try tapping on the kidneys or rubbing the kidneys and activating them up. So this could just be as simple as, like just drumming right behind your back and feeling those kind of activating, rubbing them, giving them some kind of love to say, come back alive for me. And the other piece is inhaling the color midnight blue into the kidneys. So that's taking the energy that you're absorbing it, but then kind of programming it so it specifically goes to the kidneys. And our kidneys are linked to our primal energy source. So it's the battery. So if you think about you being like a cell phone, that's what's draining all day. And that's why if your lower back hurts at night when you lay into bed, those are the kidneys saying, okay, we're done. And then you sleep, and then it boosts you back up, and then you go again. And then if you feel that fatigue in the back at the end of the day, that's all linked to the kidneys. So focusing on the kidneys, either inhaling dark blue light or tapping and drumming on them, or even rubbing them behind your back just for a few minutes, it makes a huge difference.
Oh, it does. And I remember when I first started learning about energy medicine, I stumbled upon Donna Eden, and Donna Eden talked a lot about the kidney meridians. And I started to do some of those movements and tapping my kidneys, and I could feel like just pulses kind of coming up out of my kidneys. And I did recognize I would get emotional because kidneys hold fear, kidneys hold certain emotions. And so I would find as I moved that stagnant energy up and out, I would start to feel like a pressure cooker, like all these emotions would come to the surface. So I just wanted to mention that for the listeners and the watchers to be aware of that too, that you may feel a little bit of an emotional release when you start to do some of these movements and techniques.
Yes. Yeah. It's often, most frequently people cry. It's a response from a Qigong treatment or exercise. But you can also get angry. You can also start having doubt. You can also start laughing. Like I have one client who laughs the entire time that I treat them. It's kind of weird to me because I'm like, are you laughing at me? But I know it's just an energetic release. So if something happens that seems wonky and not like out of character for you, I always say, just keep going with the exercise and let it pass. Like, I think most of the time we stop too early, but you want to let it, once it comes to the surface, like let it go. And if you got to cry, like cry, because once it's gone, it's gone. Like, so it's a beautiful thing when we can move emotions that way.
It is. And I think as practitioners, I know when I see someone having that type of a response, I'm like, oh, they're moving something out. Something is moving through. And so whatever that response is, I'm like, that we're moving that energy out. And so Samm, let's talk about your book, Workplace Healers. So what is the role of a workplace healer?
Yes. So, when I first started thinking about this work going into the workplace, I really was trying to think, the question always becomes, how do we take this and integrate it into the entire workplace? Because the answer is never going to be, it would be cool to have a Qigong practitioner set up in every workplace who just somehow takes care of all the people in the organization.
Or every morning, everybody does a Qigong, 15-minute Qigong.
Yes. So that's the big vision. But until we get there, how do we start slowly shifting the workplaces? And I have figured out that if you train HR practitioners who are dealing a lot with people and even leaders on some of these techniques, and they start to integrate them in the way they're doing team building, the way that they're coaching individuals, that is a way for us to get in. Because what I started using, and what I didn't realize I was using my empathic and my intuitive abilities for a long time, was in my profession when I was facilitating in those situations. Like, I didn't conveniently know the right thing to say at the right time because I'm just that good. It's because I was tapping into other things. And as I've kind of crafted this skill set, it's made it even more powerful. I'm learning how to hold spaces and understand when energy is shifting out of alignment. How can I maybe shift it back? And so Workplace Healers is the book that starts to lay that foundation. And one of the pieces that's really huge about it is with Qigong, when we train to be a Qigong practitioner, we have to prepare ourselves as a vessel. We have to do the work ourselves first. Otherwise, we have the ability to possibly do transference, which is put our stuff into the people that we're doing work with, or be so triggered by what's coming at us and only seeing kind of that mirror that we can't actively serve in the healing capacity.
Or be
and so sponge. Workplace Healers starts the process for these individuals to start cleaning up themselves as a vessel, really focused on what the workplace has done to us from a trauma perspective, because there is a lot of trauma associated with the workplace. And how do I start tuning in and cleaning up at least those really erratic kind of things so that I can find my grounding and start to do these works and these exercises?
Oh, yes. And I think that's fantastic. And, you are so needed in these corporate environments, and I can speak from many corporate environments because I worked in several throughout, my last 25 years before I started doing my energy healing business. But there is such a kind of a sense of the moment you wake up, you're go, 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 go till you get home. And then you can't shut down, and then you wake back up, and then you're doing the same thing. At least that was my experience in healthcare. And when you talk about trauma, that's exactly just, I even struggled with a certain cell phone ring because someone would call me first thing in the morning and I had to respond to the hospital, and it started to create a little bit of PTSD, in me. And many years after I left that job, I was at a store and I heard that cell phone ring, and it immediately took me back to that moment. And so having this practice, or having these ways that we can move this energy out, to move these stuck or stagnant emotions, or whatever it may be, your thoughts, to be able to move them through and allow it in a holistic way, to allow it in a natural, free flowing way, is so beneficial. And this is ancient practice, but it's all very new, right? It's all very new to people right now. And so we're kind of, people like you and I are bringing things to the forefront that people look at us like, you're crazy, what are you talking about? But then you go to China and they're like, this is normal. We've been doing this for thousands of years, but in the States, it's a little different. And even other countries too, we all are very different in our cultures, but oh my gosh, Samm, this is so powerful. And so you have another book, HR Intuitive. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so HR Intuitive was written when I finally was going to own the fact that I am an intuitive. And I think And I was listening to a couple of your other podcasts, and I love that people point out routinely, like, being an intuitive does not make us special. Like, we all have these skill sets. It's just a matter of, mastering them and allowing them to open. And so basically what that book captured was 33 lessons up to that point of how my skill sets were opening up and materializing, and not in a way to basically say, this is how yours are going to materialize, but this is how it starts to happen. Like, you start to see number patterns, you start to develop your own spiritual library. Like, mine is weird animals show up at weird times, talking about angels and talking about these things. And what I found is, just like in this community, most of us have very similar kind of experiences, and we're looking for that affirmation. And so this book was written to kind of help, because my audience is a lot of leaders and HR practitioners who maybe don't touch any of these kinds of things, but they are intrigued by it. And so this was kind of my memoir, I guess, of what my awakening was to get this skill set kind of going in that active direction, while also giving them things to work on for themselves as well. So it has some of the basic Qigong exercises that were really significant in my life when I was clearing out my system initially. But it's like 33 like little short lessons of how I kind of got to where I am today.
That's awesome. And so where can people find these books?
Anywhere that you, wherever you buy your books. So they're available all over the globe. Amazon obviously has the hardback cover. We have a special edition on our website, which is HRartCenter.com. So you can order there. But yeah, anywhere that you want. We also have an audiobook for the HR Intuitive, which I highly recommend. I did not read it, but a very close and gifted friend of mine named Dave Shiverini, which is interesting hearing your book read by a man, but he pulls it off like beautifully. You must know me just really well, because I enjoyed listening to it. And I was like, was that my book? Because
it is just totally different vibe listening. I'm a big clairaudient person, so I love listening versus visually reading, because I can visualize more when I listen. So I think there's people, a lot of us intuitives are very different on how we take in our energy.
So there's an audiobook. The audiobook for Workplace Healers is coming, and hopefully will be out in the next couple of months. I will say they're both intuitively written. That's how I write my books. Workplace Healers is a little more practical. It's filled with the stuff that people have been asking for a long time, whereas the HR Intuitive was pretty much whatever I wanted to write, I was going to write.
That was coming out of your intuitive closet. That's what my show was about yesterday.
Yeah, that's what that book was coming out of the closet for me, the intuitive closet.
So Samm, if people want to learn more about Qigong, or they want to find more resources, maybe they want to become a medical Qigong healer, where do they go? Is there some place that you can guide them where they can learn more?
Yeah, so there's my lineage. There's the East Coast Institute of Qigong, which is in medical Qigong in Gettysburg, and the teacher is Ted O'Brien. I highly recommend. He is incredible. There's also a series of books by Dr. Jerry Allen Johnson, which you can find on Amazon. And Dr. Jerry Allen Johnson actually just came out of retirement post 2020. So you can actually learn from the guy that was the first one who took these traditions out of China with permission and created the first curriculum here in the US. So that's the lineage that I come from. And then we teach medical Qigong classes now at my center in our school entity, which is called the Intuitive HRart Institute. So you can find that intuitiveheartinstitute.com. And that's HRart, which is HRart. .com. So you can totally check those things out. We have tons of free resources on our website. At YouTube, you said that.
YouTube, check them out there too. There's
so much
out there. Yeah.
And even Ted O'Brien, my teacher, Medical Qigong 101, I think is his YouTube channel. Lots of great, fascinating videos. He's an incredible teacher.
That's excellent. And so for those leaders out there who may be tuning in to this episode, tell us a little bit more about the HRart Center, Samm, and how people can contact you. If there are leaders out there who want to bring this practice to their corporation or their industry or their business, how can they do that? How can they connect with you?
Yeah. So I'm sure that Tanya's going to probably put my contact info in the show notes, so you can reach out to me directly on my email address. But just to kind of peek behind the curtain, as in regards to our work with corporations, we've launched something called culture care partnerships, where we're basically doing a leadership development curriculum with your core leadership team that takes them through their own personal healing from an energy care perspective, but then also starts teaching them some of the skill sets on how they can start caring for the others in your organization, and then also getting to audit your current systems and how it's impacting the flow of energy in your organization. So I think one of the really fascinating things just to think about, with all our conversation about the complexity of what makes us up as human beings. So if you take that energy and you magnify it by how many employees you have in your company, and then think about all those little energy bubbles coming in contact with each other and trying to deal with life. I mean, that's what we're talking about, trying to figure out how to navigate when we're thinking about culture. And I think it just opens up a whole nother layer for us. And one of the greatest toolkits and tool sets that we give is, looking at emotions. Excess emotions are one of the main symptoms for us to basically figure out how to fix a system or identify where somebody's getting pushed. I mean, if they're all angry or they're all really happy when you give them happy hours for their liver, we're going to look at what's causing that excess energy to become stagnant there. If they're always wanting sweets or sugar, like that could be the spleen. So we're going to look at that aspect. And the spleen's also what articulates our desires and our wants and makes our purposes kind of come to life. So if you are having struggles with materializing that, like they're all kind of connected. So it gives these really cool kind of skill sets that are abstract. Like what Tanya said, they're super ancient and old, but they feel new today and they're a little bit outside our comfort zone. But once you kind of just incorporate them into your current thought processes, they help us kind of demystify people in the workplace and how we can help and also help the organization be successful.
Really does. It's kind of funny because now it's like, had I had these skills when I worked in the corporate workplace, it would have been a lot different. Because it's funny because now I'll be like, I see an angry person and I immediately know they need to detox their liver. Like, it's really funny because you can start to apply the emotion to the physical body and just really incorporate that in with their energetic system too. So it's fascinating to learn all these different modalities. And the neat thing about it when you're working with energy is they all just plug right into each other very effortlessly, very seamlessly. And I love that because even in my practice, when I'm doing hypnosis, I'm doing EFT tapping, I'm doing muscle testing, I'm doing the emotion code. I have all these things going on, and now it's like, maybe I need to involve some Qigong in there too. I could definitely utilize some of that because it really is truly all energy. And I think once we as a society begin to learn more about that, tapping into our ancient knowledge that we kind of already have, it's just remembering it. And then rewiring ourselves to be able to bring that in, holistically. And I noticed this when I first started to, when I first left the hospital that I was working at, I did notice they had invited the whole hospital to a session and it was all about holistic care. And I thought, okay, this is positive. They are moving in a wellness approached direction. And it was kind of funny because it was literally weeks before I had left, but I felt good leaving because it was like, I do see a shift, and they were changing the name of their entire organization, and all of these changes were happening, but they looked to be positive. They looked to be for the better. And so I do feel, Sam, that corporations are starting to incorporate more of this health and wellness into their approach, into their businesses. My sister works for a sportswear company, and they've always incorporated it. They have a gym, they have all these things, but it's like another layer when you incorporate the energy into it, right? Is that how you feel?
Well, I totally do. And I will say this is the first time I've ever done, and I've done a lot of leadership development work where we've tackled really tough conflict issues in workplaces where I've engaged in conflict with the leaders on, is this right? Is this wrong? And when you're dealing with energy and you're having people have active releases in these kind of like team sessions, which is all brand new. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what are they thinking? But even though it's been rough, I would say, like, even though it's all great healing work, but it looks like kind of chaotic, all those leaders have said, like, we are not stepping back. Like, we do believe this is the way forward. We're going to let people choose if they want to be involved or not, which I think you should. No one should be forced. But I think it says a lot that these leaders are saying, no, I do believe that we've got to commit to something. We've got to do the work. So they're really pushing past that layer where it was just like, well, there's a gym there. Why aren't you working out? Yeah. We offer a morning yoga class. We give you a meditation time. It's not our fault you don't do it. And so to really, it takes an organization to really say, no, you're important. And so part of your day, we're carving it out now. And now it's up to you what you're going to do with that time when you're in that space. You can totally do nothing and check out, or you can make the most of it and really work on yourself. And let's talk about that. And then being open to suggestions about how to modify the workplace post that. Because I do think we're seeing that across the board with the Great Resignation, with quiet quitting. We're trying to set boundaries. And if organizations are going to meet us halfway, I think we're going to do it ourselves. I mean, the younger generation says they're going to just recreate brand new businesses with these new parameters in place. So we have to figure it out. So I think it's a very exciting time to be where we're at. There's a lot of work to do, but it's a very exciting time.
It really is. And we can't run like robots forever, and I got to that. Correct. I felt like a hamster on a wheel. It just was never ending. Yes. And I was even in a semi-leadership role, and I knew I had to be the example, but I was so burnt out, I just couldn't do it. And so, I think across the country, there's leaders probably watching this saying, I'm burnout too. I need Qigong. I need these things before I can even provide this for my employees. And so there's so much that, gets weighted on leadership that, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I can only speak that because I was in that role, but I was also in the role of a non-leadership role too. And so it's like, I could see both sides, but it really, I think half the battle is getting leadership on board, but also having them go through these services as well first, to be able to recharge their batteries before they can even present themselves to their employees.
Yeah. And I always like to tell people, like, if you're not doing, whether it's Qigong or any kind of energy kind of care, if you're not doing it, your body and energy system is basically like a storage unit that's been hauling around all the stuff that you've accumulated for your entire life. So depending on your age, and then if you believe in, past lives and, what else you're hauling with you. And so this gives us a chance to move things through. And what we always tell people is, when we do Qigong or energy care, we're increasing your capacity. We're getting rid of some of the clutter so that you have the space to do this work. Like, you're tired because you have no more space. You have no more emotional room. You have no more bandwidth. That's why people are checking out and they get numb. There's no more space. Like, so can't take in life, not even from a joyous perspective. And so this is a way to kind of move that through and clear out. And if you do believe in past lives, let's clear it out so you don't have to learn the lesson again next life.
Yeah. Ain't nobody got time for that.
That's right. Please, let's not repeat incessantly lives and lessons.
So if there's any of you out there who are listening that are struggling, with burnout, with stress, with fatigue, with exhaustion, with compassion fatigue, workplace, stress, whatever it may be, check out Qigong, check it out, whether it's your a movement practice, like we said on YouTube, or reach out to Samm. So Samm, what is your website? Where can people go to check you out?
So it is HRartCenter.com. So it's HRartCenter.com. And we have all our resources there. All our free resources are there. You can find out about all of our sessions. We do distance work as well. So just like with Reiki, we can do distance energy work. So it doesn't matter if you're not local to the area. If you happen to be in Pennsylvania or Maryland, we are located in York, Pennsylvania, and have an actual physical center. And then for corporations, we do travel and go on site, and we'll take tables depending on what's appropriate for your workspace. So we try to do our best to ease people in with the modality and not, like, people who haven't had energy work, they get weird when a massage table comes into a space.
I grew up in Western New York, not far from that area. So there's a lot of intuitives in that area, I've got to say. So I think you'd probably be more surprised. A lot of people in that area are more open to it. I was actually surprised that there are certain pockets of the country that I think people are more open to these modalities. And then there's other areas where they're like, I'm not so sure about that. But Samm, I really give you kudos. I thank you so much for coming out of the intuitive closet, and especially working in HR, because you have such a stigma on you in HR that you have to be this prim and proper and perfect employee and you can't do wrong. And you are actually paving a new path. You are creating a new vision, a new sense of structure for these organizations. And I just send so much energy to you and the HRart Center and to all your employees and all of you who are literally out there with a machete, creating a new path in the woods. And I feel like many of us are doing this, and it is not easy. And there's times when it's fun and there's times when it's not so fun. And so, thank you for the energy that you're putting out into the world. And thank you so much for being transparent and allowing, people to come to you, to ask questions, and just holding that space for people to learn more about energy work and Qigong and some of these things that may seem a little foreign to some people.
Well, thank you, Tanya, for creating a beautiful platform for us to share and educate the world. And, it's going to take all of us together to move this. And if I can be a resource in any way, don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Great. I appreciate it, Samm. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.